Have you ever noticed how comforting a multiple choice test usually is? I mean, think back to high school or even your technical training
Oh,
years,
yeah, definitely.
right?
Yeah.
You're sitting there staring at a piece of paper, and you know with absolute certainty that one of those four bubbles is like the mathematically undeniably correct answer.
It's very black and white.
Exactly. It's like looking at a broken bone on an X-ray.
Mm.
You see the jagged white line, you point to it, and the diagnosis is objective. You either know the formula or you just don't.
Yeah, but then you step out of that sterile classroom environment.
Yes, you step into the chaotic, messy, human-driven world of organizational leadership and military promotions, and suddenly that X-ray machine is completely broken.
Right, the problems aren't mechanical anymore.
No, they're behavioral. You're looking at this crazy diagnostic landscape, and the answers, well, they're murky, really murky.
They absolutely are.
So welcome to this uniquely tailored deep dive. Today, we are focusing entirely on navigating those incredibly murky waters. We are exploring the technical sergeant-weighted airman promotion system.
Specifically focusing on the Situational Judgment Test.
Right, the SJT. Our mission for this deep dive is to decode the complex cognitive demands of this examination, and we're using two specific foundational sources to do it.
The Comprehensive Architectural Analysis and the newly updated 2025 edition of Air Force Handbook 1.
Yep, those are our soul grounding sources. We are going to serve as your comprehensive study guide today to help you, the listener, fully transition into an operational mindset.
But listen, if you are looking for flashcards or like rote memorization, you are in the wrong place.
Oh, absolutely. Memorizing isolated facts and acronyms will absolutely not help you survive this test.
No, it won't. Instead, we're going to unpack the psychology, the human friction, and the deep military doctrine behind the test.
So you can understand exactly what is being asked of you when there is, no obvious right answer.
And that is the exact framing we need. Because the most dangerous trap you can fall into with the situational judgment test is treating it like a physics exam.
Right, looking for that one objective law of nature.
Exactly. It is absolutely not about finding a binary right or wrong answer derived from physics. There's no hidden answer key locked in a vault that relies on pure mathematics.
So how is it graded then, if there's no math behind it?
Well, the effectiveness of any given response on this exam is determined by subject matter expert consensus.
SME consensus.
Okay. Before a scenario ever makes it to your test booklet, it goes through this grueling evaluation process. Panels of chief master sergeants, senior commanders, and behavioral experts, they all sit down and review these specific workplace scenarios.
Wow, okay, so it's a jury of chiefs.
Essentially, yes. They look at a set of potential responses, and then they rate each potential action on a Likert scale.
A Likert scale, like the strongly agree to strongly disagree type thing.
Exactly like that. It typically ranges from 1 to 7, and they do this to establish a statistical agreement.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah, so you're not trying to find the mathematically perfect solution. You're trying to identify the action that this jury of the most experienced senior enlisted leaders in the Air Force collectively agrees is the most optimal leadership behavior for that specific situation.
Let's stop right there because that completely shifts the paradigm of how you need to study. I mean, if we are dealing with a jury of chief master sergeants rather than a calculator, we have to understand their voting criteria.
Yay, absolutely do.
We have to know what makes them nod their heads in agreement and what makes them immediately reject a course of action. So let's unpack this concept. How do these subject matter experts define the extremes of that scale? What sits at the absolute bottom of the barrel versus what rises to the very top?
It really all comes down to doctrinal baselines. The experts explicitly define the least effective actions as those that blatantly violate the non-negotiable ethical baselines.
The ones established in Air Force Handbook 1.
Exactly, specifically Chapter 1. But, it goes beyond just active ethical violations. The bottom of the scale is heavily populated by actions that represent a total abdication of supervisory responsibilities.
Abdication. That's a strong word. We really need to focus on that.
Yeah, because abdication usually does not look like malicious sabotage, right? More often than not, it looks like avoidance.
Oh, like the supervisor who sees a toxic situation brewing and decides to just, look the other way because confronting it would be awkward.
Bingo. It's prioritizing your own temporary peace of mind over the long-term health of the mission. If an action prioritizes self-interest or ignores a festering problem or just kicks the can down the road, it mathematically sinks to the bottom of that consensus scale.
Makes total sense. So what about the other end, the most effective responses?
Conversely, the most effective responses perfettamente align with the intermediate and advanced proficiency behaviors codified in the behavioral guidelines.
That's Air Force Handbook 36-2647, right?
Yes, exactly. The most effective choices are proactive. They demonstrate emotional intelligence, they tackle root causes rather than just symptoms, and they show an unwavering commitment to developing the people around you.
Even when it's exhausting. Which, let's be honest, it usually is.
Oh, it's incredibly exhausting, but that's the job.
That brings up a critical point about your identity as you walk into this testing center. To bridge the gap between understanding the theory of this test and actually executing it, we have to talk about the overarching identity the Air Force requires of a technical sergeant.
Right, because the test is measuring whether you have internalized this identity shift.
Exactly. Think of it like this. Imagine a highly skilled musician. They've spent the last 5 years perfecting their skills on a single instrument, maybe the violin.
Okay, a violin player.
Right. They are a master tactician. They know exactly how to place their fingers,
Right.
how to read the sheet music, and how to execute flawlessly on their own. But suddenly, they get promoted.
And everything changes.
Everything. The Air Force walks up, takes the violin out of their hands, hands them a baton, and says, "Congratulations, you are now conducting the entire orchestra."
That's a really great analogy.
You can't just worry about your own sheet music anymore. You have to understand how the brass section integrates with the percussion, how to manage the tempo of the entire group, and how to bring out the best in players who might be struggling.
I really like that framing. And the Air Force formally defines that specific shift in identity as reaching operational competence.
Operational competence. Okay.
Yeah. When we look at the enlisted force structure doctrine, it explicitly states that the non-commissioned officer tier serves as the operational backbone of the United States Air Force.
That's a huge responsibility.
It is, specifically in Air Force Instruction 36-2618. When you put on the rank of technical sergeant, the expectation completely changes. You are formally required to be a leader of leaders.
A leader of leaders. So moving entirely beyond mere tactical execution.
Exactly. It is no longer just about how fast you can turn a wrench or how accurately you can process an administrative document or, how well you play that proverbial violin.
Right, it's bigger than that.
Much bigger. It is about your ability to optimize organizational workflows, execute mission-focused requirements, and actively develop the junior non-commissioned officers beneath you.
And I imagine this is where a lot of people fail the test, right?
Oh, constantly. Because a response on the exam that might seem perfectly acceptable or even highly efficient for a senior airman who is solely focused on their individual daily tasks will often be rated as highly ineffective for a technical sergeant.
Because the technical sergeant is expected to view the entire organizational system.
Yes, and anticipate the cascading impacts of every single decision.
Right, the aperture has to open. But here's the challenge. Telling someone they need to be a leader of leaders and optimize workflows sounds great in like a motivational speech, but it is incredibly abstract.
It is very abstract.
So how does the Air Force actually measure that? You can't just grade someone on vibes.
No, you definitely can't.
We need a universal language, and that is exactly what the comprehensive architectural analysis provides through the Air Force Foundational Competencies architecture.
Right, the architecture acts as the blueprint.
Exactly. It's the blueprint for the exact behaviors expected across the entire enterprise, regardless of whether you're turning wrenches on a flight line, analyzing intelligence, or managing a dining facility.
And that architecture removes the ambiguity. It is divided into 4 comprehensive domains.
And it is crucial to understand that every single scenario you face on this situational judgment test is mapped directly to one or more of these domains, right?
Yes, every single one. The architecture starts from the inside and works its way out. So the first domain is developing the self.
Developing self. Okay, let's dig into that.
This is the bedrock. You absolutely cannot effectively lead a complex organization or manage other human beings if you cannot manage your own internal landscape first.
Oh, that's profound. So what does that actually look like?
Well, developing self demands intense internal emotional intelligence. It requires extreme personal accountability and the self-control to uphold standards even when you are exhausted, frustrated, or the standards are deeply unpopular with your team.
I want to pause on developing self for a second because I think people gloss over it. They think it just means, going to the gym or doing your own professional military education.
Right, checking boxes.
Yeah, but in the context of this test, developing self is about impulse control, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's about emotional regulation.
It's about that moment when a critical tool goes missing, the commander's demanding answers, your blood pressure spikes, and every instinct tells you to start screaming at your subordinates.
We all been there.
Right. So developing self means possessing the psychological discipline to process that cortisol spike, stabilize your own emotions, and execute a rational search plan instead of throwing a tantrum.
Yes, and it's about taking responsibility for the failure instead of immediately throwing your team under the bus to save your own reputation.
Which is so tempting in the moment.
Yeah, it is, but that is precisely what the subject matter experts are looking for. They are looking for reliability under pressure and the humility to admit your own mistakes.
Okay, so that's the internal piece.
Right. Once you've demonstrated that internal discipline, the architecture moves outward. This brings us to the second domain, developing others.
Okay, so you have stabilized yourself, but now you have to project that stability into a complex, often messy social environment.
Exactly. Developing others focuses intensely on teamwork, active listening, and the ability to anticipate and resolve conflicts before they degrade unit cohesion.
Which means as a technical sergeant operating at an intermediate or advanced proficiency level, you are no longer just participating in the team.
No, you are the architect of the team's culture. You must treat your followers as individuals with different needs, utilizing individualized consideration.
So knowing which of your airmen needs a quiet, supportive conversation behind closed doors, and which one needs a very firm, clear wake-up call regarding their performance.
Exactly. You have to coach them, mentor them, and possess the moral courage to address substandard performance constructively rather than just, writing them off as a lost cause.
Okay, so you has mastered your own emotional responses, and you have built a cohesive, communicative team. That's 2 domains down.
Right.
But what happens when the team is great, but the actual processes you are forcing them to execute are fundamentally broken? I mean, you can't just develop others your way out of a terrible workflow.
No, you really can't. That is a completely different skill set.
So how does the Air Force handle that?
And that reality is exactly why the third domain exists. Developing ideas.
Developing ideas. Okay.
This is where the Air Force demands that you use analytical and creative thinking to drive systemic innovation. You have to challenge outdated methodologies.
Because as a technical sergeant, you are considered the technical expert of your shop. You know the granular details of how the mission gets done better than the officers above you.
Exactly. Therefore, you are uniquely positioned to prototype potential solutions, connect the dots between a seemingly random supply shortage and a recurring maintenance delay, and synthesize those disparate data points into actionable intelligence.
So developing ideas means you don't just complain about a broken system.
Right. You design a better protocol and then convince your peers and superiors to adopt it.
Which leads us to the final piece of the puzzle. You have the emotional control, you have the team, you have the new ideas, but you have to implement all of this in the real world.
Where time, money, and personnel are constantly scarce.
Exactly.
That is the culmination of the architecture, the developing organizations domain.
The fourth domain.
Yes. At the intermediate and advanced leadership levels, you must manage highly limited resources responsibly. You must utilize strategic thinking to integrate your localized tactical operations with the broader wing and Air Force missions.
So this domain requires you to constantly look up and out.
Up and out? Exactly. You have to understand how a single failure or delay in your specific section cascades upward and impacts the overarching mission of the base.
It's all connected.
It is. You have to manage the allocation of time, personnel, and equipment with extreme precision. Most importantly, developing organizations requires the competence and the courage to elevate resource deficiencies to command levels when your mission capabilities are legitimately compromised.
You can't just suffer in silence.
No. You are expected to guide your subordinates through massive operational transitions and sustain effectiveness even during periods of high turbulence.
Wow. Okay, now understanding these 4 behavioral domains is fantastic for your conceptual knowledge. But when you actually sit down in that chair to take the test, you also have to know where the literal rulebook validates these concepts.
You absolutely have to know the doctrine.
You do. This brings us to the structural changes implemented in the newly updated 2025 edition of Air Force Handbook 1. And if you are testing during this cycle, you need to pay close attention to this.
Very close attention.
Because the source material has shifted, and relying on outdated study habits will burn you. So what are the major changes here?
Well, The structural realignment in the 2025 edition is highly intentional, and it profoundly impacts how you should evaluate the test scenarios.
Okay, give us the biggest one.
Most notably, the highly critical professionalism chapter was deliberately relocated from its previous position at the back of the book all the way to the front, becoming Chapter 1.
Wait, really? They moved the whole chapter to the front?
Yes. And we need to be clear, this was not just a random administrative shuffle by some editor. By placing professionalism at the very front of the foundational doctrine, the Air Force is establishing an absolute, non-negotiable ethical baseline.
That makes a lot of sense.
Exactly.
So Chapter 1 is now the starting point.
Right. It now immediately covers the profession of arms, the core values, and ethical standards.
So for the test taker, what does that practically mean?
It means that any situational judgment response option that compromises integrity, cuts an ethical corner, or prioritizes self-interest over the service is automatically and permanently disqualified as the least effective option.
Doesn't matter how tactically useful or efficient that action might seem in the short term.
Exactly. If it violates Chapter 1, the jury of chiefs has universally condemned it.
It's the ultimate filter. If the action doesn't survive Chapter 1, you don't even need to evaluate it against the other domains.
Spot on.
Now, it's also worth noting another structural change in the 2025 handbook so you aren't caught off guard. In strict accordance with recent executive orders, all direct references and sections dealing with diversity, equity, and inclusion nomenclature have been entirely removed from the text.
That's correct.
And we're maintaining absolute neutrality here. We're simply conveying the factual, structural changes of the source material.
Yeah.
So if you are using an older study guide or reviewing previous testing materials, just be aware that those specific frameworks and their associated terminology won't be on your current test.
Right. It's just about knowing what's inbounds and out of bounds for the current cycle.
Exactly. So while some things were removed, what was added or emphasized?
A massive psychological concept was formally introduced and heavily emphasized in Chapter 15, the growth mindset.
Oh, the growth mindset. I've heard a lot about this.
It's vital. The 2025 handbook explicitly contrasts a growth mindset with a fixed mindset, and this distinction is a major key to passing the exam.
Okay, can you break down the difference for us?
Sure. A fixed mindset assumes that a person's intelligence, capabilities, and fundamental qualities are permanent, unchangeable traits.
So if someone fails, a fixed mindset says,
It says, they are just a failure, they don't have what it takes.
wow, that's pretty bleak.
It is, and the Air Force now doctrinally mandates the adoption of a growth mindset across the NCO tier instead.
So what is the growth mindset doctrinally?
It is the core belief that a subordinate's failures, struggles, or shortcomings are simply temporary deficits in knowledge or experience. Under this newly emphasized doctrine, a failure is not a permanent character flaw.
Okay, so what is it then?
It is an active opportunity that requires structured coaching, deliberate feedback, and developmental patience.
That psychological construct has to be absolutely critical for the exam.
It is. Any response option that writes off an airman's mistake as an unfixable flaw or simply seeks to punish them without offering a pathway to improvement will be rated poorly by the subject matter experts.
Because it violates the doctrinal mandate of the growth mindset found in Chapter 15.
Exactly.
This is exactly what we mean when we say you have to dig into the psychology of the test. You aren't just memorizing regulations, you are applying a philosophy of human development.
That's beautifully said.
Thank you. But how does this actually look in the trenches? Let's get out of the theoretical clouds and shift this deep dive into practical application.
Let's do it.
Here is where it gets really interesting. We are going to analyze 4 specific, highly realistic scenarios taken directly from the source text and apply everything we just discussed.
Real-world application.
Yes. Let's look at the first scenario. Imagine you are a section chief. You have a brutal interpersonal conflict between 2 of your staff sergeants, Staff Sergeant Adams and Staff Sergeant Baker.
Okay, Adams and Baker. Set the stage.
So Adams is brilliant, highly analytical, but struggles with intense, rigid perfectionism. He refuses to move a project forward until every single microscopic detail is flawless.
Which I'm guessing means deadlines are constantly being missed.
Constantly. On the other hand, you have Staff Sergeant Baker. Baker is a machine. He prioritizes speed and output over everything else. He gets things done incredibly fast.
But he probably cuts corners.
Exactly. He occasionally skips procedural steps or misses administrative details just to meet the suspense.
Yeah.
Their different approaches have caused massive visible friction in the shop.
I can imagine.
They are arguing, milestones are being dropped, And the junior airmen are watching this toxic dynamic play out, which is severely degrading morale.
That's a mess.
It is a mess. So let's be real for a second. In the operational Air Force, the mission has a hard deadline at 1600 hours. The jet needs to fly, or the report needs to be filed. I don't have time to be a couples counselor for two grown staff sergeants.
Right, you've got a mission to run.
So wouldn't it just be infinitely easier and more efficient for the immediate mission to separate their duties entirely?
Put them in different corners.
Yeah. Put Adams on quality control, put Baker on rapid execution, separate their shifts, and ensure the mission gets done without all the workplace drama. I mean, is that just logical?
That is the exact pragmatic argument that trips up thousands of test takers every year.
Really? So it's a trap.
It's a massive temptation to just separate conflicting personalities to save the immediate afternoon's mission. But the expert consensus tells us that taking that path is entirely the wrong approach.
Okay, unpack that for us. Why?
Separating them, or entirely ignoring the tension and hoping they work it out themselves, are definitively rated as the least effective actions.
The absolute bottom of the Likert scale.
Yes, because we have to go back to what we discussed earlier. Those actions represent a catastrophic abdication of your supervisory duties.
It's abdication again.
Exactly. If you simply separate Adams and Baker, you are treating the symptom, not the disease. You are allowing a toxic, unresolved environment to fester beneath the surface, and you are fundamentally failing to develop your people.
Oh, I see. You're essentially telling the junior airman watching that conflict avoidance is the preferred Air Force leadership model.
Precisely. By separating them, you demonstrate a severe lack of personal accountability and initiative, which violently clashes with the expectations of the developing self and developing others' domains.
Okay, so avoiding the conflict is an automatic failure. What is the optimal play here?
The most effective action, according to the grading consensus, is turning into the skid.
Turning into the skid, I like that. So what do you do?
You must call a formal sit-down mediation meeting with both staff sergeants. You don't just tell them to play nice, you actively manage the conflict.
What does that sound like in the room?
You must clearly acknowledge the inherent value of their differing working styles. You tell them, look, Adams's precision is necessary and Baker's speed is necessary.
Okay, validate both sides.
Right. Then you facilitate a structured discussion to establish a mutually agreeable workflow that incorporates both of their strengths, while clearly outlining your rigid expectations for professional team cohesion moving forward.
Wow, okay, so you're forcing them to compromise and collaborate.
Yes, and this response isn't just a good idea, it directly applies the doctrinal conflict resolution principles found in Chapter 14.
Chapter 14, got it.
More importantly, it is the perfect execution of the growth mindset we just talked about.
Oh, because you're coaching them through their interpersonal friction.
Exactly. You are treating their inability to collaborate as a temporary deficit that can be solved through leadership. Rather than treating their conflict as an unsolvable permanent barrier, you are forcing them to grow.
You are making them better leaders, not just separating them like squabbling children. I love how that connects the growth mindset directly to a daily headache.
It's practical doctrine.
Okay, let's look at the second scenario. This one deals with subordinate wellness, discipline, and the friction between empathy and accountability.
This is a tough balance for a lot of NCOs.
It really is. So you have a senior airman in your section who has historically been a stellar fire-and-forget performer. You never had to worry about them.
The dream airman.
Exactly. But over the last 3 weeks, there has been a drastic shift. They are suddenly arriving late to shift. Their uniform looks disheveled and unkempt. They are withdrawn and isolated from the team.
Flags everywhere.
Everywhere. When you finally pull them aside to address the tardiness, their immediate reaction is highly defensive. But as you talk, their guard drops slightly, and they briefly mention that they are drowning in severe financial debt and dealing with escalating, deeply painful marital issues at home.
Okay, so they are in full crisis mode.
Complete crisis. Now, as a compassionate leader who cares about your people, the instinct here is heavy empathy. You know this airman is a good person going through a nightmare.
Right, your heart goes out to them.
So the immediate thought is, I need to give them some breathing room. Why not just tell them to take Thursday and Friday off, stay home, sort out the bank and the spouse, and come back Monday refreshed?
Just kind of slide them under the radar.
Yeah, keep it under the radar. Don't charge them formal leave. Just take care of the human being. Isn't that what taking care of your people looks like?
While that instinct absolutely comes from a genuine place of wanting to protect your people, Granting informal, under-the-radar time off is unequivocally the least effective choice you could make in this scenario.
Wait, really? The least effective?
Yes. First, we have to look at the structural rules. Doing this directly violates Air Force leave directives and manpower accountability regulations.
Oh, right. Because you don't actually know where they are.
Exactly. Remember our discussion about Chapter 1. Circumventing established regulations to provide an illegal favor, even a well-intentioned one, undermines institutional integrity.
It's a failure of judgment.
It is a catastrophic failure of judgment that sacrifices the ethical baseline of the organization. But beyond the rule violation, let's look at the practical reality of the second and third order effects.
Okay, what happens next?
Giving someone a completely unstructured, undocumented 48 hours off does absolutely nothing to solve the root crisis.
I guess that's true. 2 days at home will not magically resolve severe financial insolvency.
No, nor will it repair a collapsing marriage. In fact, leaving them isolated at home with their spiraling thoughts might actually exacerbate the crisis.
Oh, wow. I didn't think about that. It might make it worse.
It's a false fix.
Right.
It just delays the inevitable crash while making you complicit in breaking the rules.
You are trying to be a friend instead of a technical sergeant.
Exactly. You're abdicating your role. The experts champion a completely different approach for the most effective action.
So what should the technical sergeant do?
You must conduct a private, documented, but informal feedback session. In the session, you use intense active listening. You express genuine concern, you let them speak without judgment, but you do not try to act as their financial advisor or marriage counselor.
Because you are not qualified to do that.
You are not. Instead, you facilitate a warm handoff to the appropriate helping agencies, such as the First Sergeant, the Military and Family Readiness Center, or a military and family life counselor.
A warm handoff.
Right. And this perfectly aligns with the assessments guidance outlined in Chapter 8. It demonstrates profound emotional intelligence and mastery of the developing others' competency.
Because you are enforcing the standard,
Yeah.
they still should show up on time and in uniform.
Yeah.
But you are holistically addressing the airman's crisis by connecting them to systemic support.
You balance the empathy with the professional accountability.
That is such a vital distinction. Empathy doesn't mean ignoring the rules. Empathy means using your authority to get them the actual professional help they need to survive the crisis.
Exactly. Empathy with boundaries.
All right, let's pivot to the third scenario. This one moves away from interpersonal issues and dives into the friction of organizational change and systems management.
This is where developing ideas really comes into play.
Yes. So, your squadron is undergoing a massive digital transition. Higher Headquarters has mandated the use of a new digital tracking system for all your operational metrics.
Oh, everyone loves a new system.
Right. The problem is the new system is notoriously buggy, the user interface is terrible, and it crashes constantly. Your subordinates absolutely hate it.
Naturally.
During a random check, you discover that your team is covertly continuing to use the old, unauthorized legacy system. To hide this, they are manually double-entering all the data into both systems.
Oh, no. Double the work.
Exactly. This workaround is doubling their daily workload, exhausting the team, and introducing massive risks for data entry errors.
That's a disaster waiting to happen.
So let's play the pragmatist again. The mandate came from a general who doesn't have to use this broken software. Your team is making sure the data gets to where it needs to go, and letting them use the old system keeps their morale slightly higher because they aren't fighting the new software all day.
I see where you're going.
Is allowing this dual entry workaround an acceptable compromise for a leader who is just trying to keep the shop running smoothly and protect their people from bad headquarters decisions?
Absolutely not. It is not an acceptable compromise in any context.
Really? Not even to keep morale up?
No. Allowing the covert dual entry workaround is firmly anchored as the least effective choice on the Likert scale.
Why is it so bad?
Because it represents a massive multi-level failure in leadership, change management, and data integrity. Let's look at the mechanism of why this is so destructive.
Okay, let's break it down.
By allowing a non-compliant process simply because you want to avoid conflict with your frustrated team, you are sacrificing long-term strategic alignment for artificial harmony.
Artificial harmony. That's a great phrase.
The phrase is crucial here. Everyone seems happy in the shop, but the foundation is rotting. If you allow them to use the workaround, higher headquarters never sees the failure metrics.
Oh.
Mm.
because they're faking it in the new system.
Right. The chain of command looks at the dashboard, sees the data populating, and assumes the new software is working perfectly. You are literally blinding the institution to a systemic failure just to avoid a grumpy Monday morning in your own section.
You are sabotaging the feedback loop.
Exactly. It degrades operational readiness and shows a complete lack of accountability to the developing organization's domain.
Because headquarters can't fix a software bug they don't know exists. So how does a leader actually handle a fundamentally broken tool that they are mandated to use?
The most effective action requires you to step up as a systems architect. You must gather the team, not to complain, but to conduct a targeted analysis.
Okay, figure out exactly what's broken.
Right. You identify the specific software bugs and the exact user interface pain points that are slowing them down. Then, you task your most proficient, tech-savvy airmen to help you develop a localized standard operating procedure.
A tactical playbook.
Yes. You mitigate those specific issues as best as possible within the confines of the new system. Simultaneously, you meticulously document the unresolvable software bugs and elevate that data up the chain of command through official channels.
This response beautifully exemplifies the developing ideas domain.
It really does. You are fostering innovation, demanding digital literacy from your team, and managing organizational change. You are respecting the higher headquarters directive, but you are taking localized ownership to solve the tactical level implementation problems.
You aren't hiding the failure, you are managing it professionally. You are acting like the operational backbone.
Exactly. You're doing the job of a technical sergeant.
Okay, that brings us to our final scenario, and this one tests your ability to handle severe resource constraints and pressure from above.
A classic manpower crisis.
Always. Your section is an absolutely critical operational node, but you are currently operating at only 60% manning due to a wave of deployments, temporary duties, and unexpected medical profiles.
60% is rough.
It's brutal. The personnel you do have left are exhausted, working 12-hour shifts and showing visible signs of severe burnout. Right in the middle of this, your flight commander walks in and assigns your section a new, high-priority, short-notice tasking that needs to be done by the end of the week.
Ouch. The worst possible timing.
Right. Now, as a supervisor, your primary job is to protect your people. If safety is truly paramount and your people are already at the breaking point, shouldn't you just look the commander in the eye, flatly refuse the tasking, and state clearly that your section simply cannot safely accomplish the mission with the current manpower?
Flatly refusing a lawful, high-priority tasking from your commander without attempting to find a logistical or analytical alternative is the absolute least effective action.
Let's say,
I know, it feels like you're protecting them. But it violates the very core tenets of the enlisted force structure. Remember, the doctrine requires non-commissioned officers to execute mission-focused requirements regardless of the friction present.
okay, so a flat no is out.
Yes. An outright, stubborn rejection undermines the organizational command structure outlined in Chapter 5, and it demonstrates a profound lack of operational competence. When you just say no, you are acting like a roadblock rather than a leader.
You are telling the commander that you have completely run out of ideas.
Precisely.
But the reality on the ground is that the people are burning out. You can't just magically create more hours in the day or magically generate more airmen. If saying no is a failure, but blindly saying yes and breaking your people is also a failure, what is the middle ground?
The middle ground is where technical sergeants earn their rank.
Tell me how.
The most effective response showcases the absolute zenith of resource management and strategic thinking within the developing organization's domain. When handed that tasking, you do not immediately react emotionally.
You hold your temper.
Yes. Instead, you conduct a rapid, highly detailed analysis of your section's current task priorities. You look at every single thing your team is currently doing.
Okay.
Then, you go back to the flight commander, not with a refusal, but with a reorganized priority matrix. You present a clear, analytical plan demonstrating exactly how the new high-priority tasking can be safely accomplished, but only if specific, lower-level, non-critical suspense dates on other projects are officially extended or paused.
Oh, you are presenting a trade-off.
Exactly. You are telling the commander, we can execute this new mission today, but this other administrative project will have to wait until next month.
You are not saying no to the mission.
Yeah.
And you are not blindly burning out your airmen by just piling more weight on their backs.
Right. You are utilizing analytical thinking to evaluate constraints, synthesize alternative solutions, and force a strategic decision that balances the immediate mission requirement with the long-term readiness and safety of your personnel.
It's the difference between throwing your hands in the air and actually managing the workflow. That is brilliant.
It's what the Air Force needs.
So, looking at all four of these diverse scenarios, the interpersonal conflict, the wellness crisis, the broken software, and the manning shortage, what does this all mean for the listener as they prepare to walk into that testing center?
It's a lot to synthesize.
It is. How do they organize all these complex variables, rules, and doctrines in their mind when the clock is ticking? Let's wrap up this deep dive by summarizing the cognitive framing strategy that ties all of this together.
Okay, let's do it.
If there is one lens the listener should constantly look through while evaluating their choices on the exam, what is it?
You need to build a critical thinking framework focused relentlessly on evaluating the ripple effect.
The ripple effect.
Yes. When you read a scenario and look at the options, you must constantly force yourself to question the second and third order consequences of any action you might choose.
So not just the immediate fix.
Right. An action that neatly solves a short-term tactical problem, like hiding a mistake to protect a subordinate's feelings, using a covert software workaround to avoid complaining, or separating two arguing airmen so you can get out of work on time might feel really good and efficient in the moment.
Because it makes the headache go away right now.
Exactly. However, if you project that action forward 6 months, what happens? If that action destroys long-term unit trust, degrades operational data integrity, or fundamentally violates the ethical baseline of Chapter 1, it is inherently mathematically ineffective.
The chiefs on the grading panel are always looking at the 6-month horizon, not just the Friday afternoon fix.
Always. Furthermore, there is an absolute necessity to balance deep, genuine empathy with strict, unwavering accountability.
Which is such a hard balance to strike.
It is, and I want to explicitly warn the listener to avoid the toxic disciplinarian trap.
The toxic disciplinarian trap.
Yeah, sometimes test takers think that choosing the most artificially harsh, purely punitive answers makes them look like a strong, tough leader.
Like, I'm going to throw the book at them.
Right. But it doesn't make you look strong. Picking the answer that immediately jumps to paperwork or punishment without offering coaching will result in a low score.
Because it completely fails to demonstrate emotional intelligence or the doctrinally mandated growth mindset.
Exactly. True operational competence requires utilizing your autonomy to solve complex problems creatively at the lowest possible level, while always remaining strictly aligned with the commander's intent and the Air Force core values.
That brings us beautifully full circle to where we started. Remember the musician who had to put down their single instrument and pick up the conductor's baton?
A perfect analogy for this whole process.
That is exactly what we have unpacked today. It is no longer just about the individual notes you play or how fast you can execute a task. It is about how you guide the entire complicated orchestra through complex, sometimes messy operational environments.
It is about emotional control, system design, and moral courage.
Absolutely. Before we sign off today, what is a final provocative thought our listeners should ponder on their own as they close the books and continue preparing for the exam?
I want to challenge you to deeply consider the immense weight of the decisions we have discussed today.
It's heavy stuff.
It is. It is very easy to view the situational judgment test as just an administrative hurdle standing between you and a pay raise. But your autonomous everyday decisions on these situational judgments do not merely determine your own personal promotion score.
What do they determine?
When you aggregate these behaviors across the entire non-commissioned officer tier, these daily choices, how you handle a broken system, how you discipline a struggling airman, how you manage a manning crisis, cumulatively dictate whether the entire Air Force successfully adapts to the rapidly evolving global security environments mentioned in the source material.
Wow, it scales up that much.
It does. Every single time you choose accountability over comfort or systemic innovation over the lazy status quo, you are effectively placing the future lethality, readiness, and ultimate survival of the service squarely on your individual moral courage.
It is not just a multiple choice test. It is the literal framework for how we fight and win. Keep that heavy reality in mind every time you sit down to study.